with another episode of the Branders Magazine Talking with Branders podcast. I am here with the one and only Joanne Chan. She's the CEO of Turner Duckworth. And if you don't know who Turner Duckworth is, get your head out of your ass and Google that, because you have experienced the brands that they work with daily, if not multiple times a day, because they are a world-renowned design and branding agency, working with the most iconic brand. But Joanne, I'm so excited to have you in the studio with us. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you. And I love your energy, and I'm hoping to match it. I'm on my third cup of coffee.
I drink way too much coffee. So tell everyone just a little bit about yourself and how you got, into the Turner Duckworth family.
Yeah. So I was employee number 2 at Turner Duckworth US, and that was 27 years ago. This is actually my second career because I spent 7 years in the fine arts world where I worked at the Guggenheim and galleries and whatnot. And then I found myself heavily in debt and ended up getting this job as an account person for David Turner on the US side, and have grown with the agency. You know, it's not the same agency as we were 27 years ago. We've gone through many different kind of evolutionary steps. And and then when David and Bruce rode off into the sunset and retired, they elevated myself and Sarah Moffett, my partner, she's global CCO, to run the company. And I've been CEO for, 7 years.
Wow.
And it's great. I love our company. It's why I've stuck around for so long, and I love our people, and I love the work. And also a little bit about myself. I live in California. I am a wonderful daughter to my parents, and I'm a very dedicated mom to our 18-year-old, and a partner to my husband.
It's amazing. Number 2 employee. So you have seen, number 1, I think it's incredible that you have stuck around for, you said 27 years.
Yes. I'm a dinosaur.
That's unheard of in this industry.
Yeah. And, obviously for time and again, I've considered other things. I've even interviewed and whatnot, but in the end, I just couldn't find anything ever, that nothing came across that was ever really better. And I kind of felt like, I feel sometimes like a founder because sometimes I am mistaken for a founder because I've been with the company for so long and helped to shape it with obviously an amazing team of people. I'm not taking sole credit for any of that, but we keep doing new things. And I think that's what's really exciting about what we do is there's always a new client, there's always a new brief, there's always a new challenge. And then, I have been here for a really long time, and that is unique because most people I meet, they move around every 5 to 7 years at most, right?
Yeah. What has been, you just brought up innovation, and like, how do you keep innovating with this group? Like after you came in as CEO, the founders were there for, many, many, many decades. How did you get that baton passed to you and instill like continuing to push innovation and push the agency forward? Because that's got to be like, those aren't small shoes to fill.
Right. Well, Sarah and I have both been here. So Sarah's also been here for a long time, 25 years. So we both worked with the founders for 20 years before they left. So they were sort of setting us up for quite some time in the background, and they could see that we had drunk the Kool-Aid, and we were, we were promoting our culture, and we kind of got it. I would say over time from, year 2 to year 10, we had an evolution that we were a part of. And then, every 5 to 7 years, we evolved as an agency. And then when the founders left, it also kind of coincided with a lot of other things happening in the world, right? So they left at the end of 2018. 2019 was our first year leading the agency, and then 2020, the dumpster fire of COVID, all that happened. And then of course we had to respond to Black Lives Matters and Stop Asian Hate, and so many things that were kind of cultural in the world, right? Yeah. So it's not just innovating in terms of how we do our work, but it's also how we show up in the world and how we show up for our people. So and then AI. I mean, there's so many things. So there's always sort of something we have to be thinking about, looking forward to,
Yeah.
and then thinking about future proofing the agency. So there's never a dull moment. It's
There's
never
no,
boring.
that's what I love about this industry, but it's also so anxiety ridden, right?
Yes.
It's a beautiful tension in all of us weird creative strategy folks where I
Yes.
love the newness and every day is so different, but that also is like maddening at times.
Well, it is because it's kind of exhausting sometimes because
Yeah,
there's always something, and now everyone's kind of terrified of AI when we should just really embrace it for
yeah,
what it is, which is right now it's a tool,
yeah,
and it's a productivity tool that's going to help us get to solutions faster, but it's not going to do our jobs for us, not
no,
yet. Um, but yeah, the kind of constantly having to stay on top of everything and responding to everything and kind of operationalizing and change management, it is kind of exhausting. But what I like to also tell our team, because we're always stressed also about meeting our numbers and making sure the clients are happy, is, hey, let's just take a breath here. We're not saving lives. We're not working in a hospital. No small children are going to be lost because XYZ happened. So
yeah,
let's just remember this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be
right.
creativity.
Right. I mean, we have the dream job that so many people in a
Right?
cubicle who are pushing
I
numbers look
know.
at us in awe. So that brings me like how you obviously are creative. Like you come from the art world. Like, how do you balance as CEO, like creativity with business goals? Because that's tough.
Yeah. I mean, so I came from the art world where I was facilitating the creation of fine art and creating exhibitions and whatnot. And then I parlayed that into this job. I'm not actually the artist and I'm not actually the
Mm,
designer or the creator, right?
sure.
So my role is to create a safe space for creativity and to facilitate creativity and to help sell it through. And in my role as now CEO, I'm less, doing the actual work of that and mentoring team members, making sure everything's kind of working across all three of our locations, working with Sarah on promoting our brand, and of course, constantly chasing new business. But I guess I would say to directly answer your question, I've always been more business minded, but I have always gravitated towards creative people. My mom is a Chinese watercolor painter and a piano teacher. And so I always kind of loved that. And maybe that's kind of why I got into the fine
Hmm.
arts at first. And then when I found myself in debt and having to find another job, I realized I could still work with creative people. And so moved into kind of the commercial side of it. And and that's what I love. I love working with creatives who are a little bit weird. They're not type A like me. They're the exact
Right.
opposite. And sometimes it's infuriating, but it's also really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can relate. Like coming from the strategy side, I call myself a frustrated creative director. Like I can't design, I can't push a pixel to save my life, but I love working with creatives, and I get so much out of it, and it truly is rewarding. So from an agency perspective, you had just mentioned, always chasing new business, and of course we're always chasing new business.
Mhm.
Um, we're all salespeople at the end of the day. Uh, what I find really unique is there's a lot of agencies that are like creating big websites and putting all this information on there, but it seemed like Turner Duckworth did the complete opposite. There's really like not a homepage. It's just some graphics and there's some like the about page is just got like a slice of pizza and like a bread bowl. Why zag? Why the giant zag? And I love it, by the way.
The reason I'm laughing is because it has been a debate between Sarah and I for a while because what we're trying to do with our site is to not put an archive of everything we've done ever. A lot of agencies do that,
Yeah.
right? And they also put a lot about their positioning and exactly what they do and whatnot. And we kind of feel like we should really put some of the best work on our site that's emblematic of what we do and why we do it and not explain too much. Having said that, we are working a bit on updating the website, which is always important, of course. But yeah, you've kind of hit on something that's really interesting because it's been an ongoing debate with us. And we do
Yeah.
think less is more. If you look at a lot of our competitors, they just have archives. It's like so many projects and you can sort by category and all that. We're not going to do that. It's just not something we want to do.
And I find that it's number one, refreshing. And I'm, I work with a lot of agencies as a consultant and as a freelancer, as a contractor for hire. And I've seen great agency web, in my opinion, it's all subjective, of course, but in my opinion, I've seen great websites that have a ton of information and others that leave you wanting more, and then others that are super compelling. And I remember like browsing yours even earlier today and just being like, it's just, because the brands that you have on there are so iconic and they're so recognizable that I think that you instantly get the breadth. And perhaps my hypothesis, Joanne, is the agencies that are trying to show you everything are the ones that don't have those iconic brands behind them to just say, no, we did Campbell's or we did Metallica or we did whatever it is. So good for you all for being in that position to do it like that.
Thank you. I mean, we'd like to think that the fact that Turner Duckworth is behind the branding for 4 of the top 10 most valuable brands in the world is enough. It promotes our street cred.
That's the mic drop. You don't need anything else.
And if a client wants to see that we've done exactly, in their category, exactly the brand architecture and all that stuff that they're looking for, then maybe they're not the right client for us as well.
Right. It's a great, sometimes saying no is the ultimate sign of flex. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Although in this economy, it's hard to do that right now, but yes.
Saying yes to everything. So what is the secret? I mean, you said 4 of the top 10 most valuable brands. Like what is the secret to creating like those iconic entities? Like, is there a secret?
I think part of it is, practice and also leaning into instinct and intuition. So it's the right brain and the left brain. So, obviously we need to use insights, Stephen, coming from a strategy side, like the insights are really important up front.
Sure.
We look for clients who are advocates and champions of design and who have some creative bravery themselves, because you can do the best work in the world and then it's just going to end up on the cutting room floor if you don't have a champion internally on the client side, right? So we look for clients who know what they're doing, who have that kind of bravery, who have the right kind of process internally, so that we don't end up going through 5 rounds of design and then it not going anywhere because the CMO was never brought on board, that kind of thing as well.
Right.
So it's also kind of finding the right clients, it's finding the right brief, and then it's really driving the creative process that's by design, by our process. It's not like a trademarked process. It's not formulaic. We don't do the same thing every time. It's bespoke for every brand. And it's not rocket science, but it's a lot of talented people. And one of the things about Turner Duckworth, I think that sets us apart from our competitors, is that we have a lot of people who've been around for a long time, who've been with us for a long time. So the way we work is kind of really unique, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's this kind of creative collaboration. It's fun. It's optimistic as much as we can make it optimistic. I'll admit there are some days that are obviously really shitty. There always are. But and then it's also really, we have like longevity with our clients. So we not only create brand assets that have longevity. The Amazon logo was created over 20 years ago. We also have longevity with our clients. We have clients for whom we've been working for 10 to 20 years. They take us with them through several jobs. We also work with brands for 10 to 15 years where we go through 3 or 4 CMOs and we're the ones who stay. We're the tie that binds.
What a testament to the culture of the internal culture, and just the fact that you're just so focused and honed in and dialed in. I think that's incredible. I love, so for all the branders out there listening, so Joanne and I have had some spirited email exchanges over the past month and a half or so, and she was so I'm grateful that she was able to send over the latest book by you and the Turner Duckworth crew. And it's right here called I Love It, What Is It? And I first saw this, I was like, I love the title. And it got me thinking, everyone. And Joanne and I were having a chuckle about this right before I pressed record. It's like I realized that I'm an essay kind of guy. Like reading large books, I might have ChatGPT summarize it for me because I just don't have the attention span. But this is a collection of essays that just span the life. Like, tell us about the impetus of this book and how it came to life. And I'm so happy to know that the red part of it that's folded up wasn't like, oh, it wasn't a bending in the mail, but that's how it's supposed to be. By the way.
Yeah,
So tell us about this book.
Sure. So, I mean, the founders have been talking about doing a book for years and years, and never were able to realize that. And so when Sarah and I took over, we said we really have to make this happen. And one of the reasons it hadn't happened is because it's really fucking hard to write a book by yourself or by oneself. So that and the fact that designers hate reading long books, we realized, let's do something that's more like snackable content, and we'll write most of it, with members of our team and kind of friends and family of Turner Duckworth, former clients and whatnot. And I also need to shout out to our co-author, Giles Lingwood, who helped us kind of shape all of the essays. He worked with all of the writers, ourselves included, to help make sure that there was a similar approach and make sure that the topics all had that kind of red thread that ran through that ties the book together. But basically, we wanted to write a book about kind of the love of branding and the stories behind the creation of some of the most iconic brands in the world. And so that was the idea that we pitched to Phaidon. And they wanted to make it a sort of coffee table book. And they said, this is the next Smile in the Mind, and it's going to be great. And, they imagined it to be this hardcover, big coffee table book with, beautiful images and whatnot, which we were excited about. But then we kind of realized, in this day and age with sustainability and portability, maybe it would be better to create something that you could just impulsively buy and put it in your backpack and carry it around. And that's kind of how it was born. Phaidon was amazing to work with. Giles was
the publisher.
Fantastic. Yeah, Phaidon's the publisher.
Gotcha.
And and then working with all of the people, it was just fantastic. We went back into our archives and brought out like Superdrug, which is over 20 years old. Of course, Amazon is one of the stories I wrote about. That's over 20 years old. And then Mackenzie River, like Sparks and Steel Reserve, those are older projects. But then also, some of the newer stuff like Campbell's, right, which was written by Linda Lee, the CMO, and then McDonald's, which was written by Morgan Flatley, the CMO of McDonald's, and then also some of the Beam Suntory work, which was written by Jessica Spence, the president of Beam Suntory North America. So, and we have some, heavy hitters also, like Stefan Segmeister did us a solid by contributing to the book. He's a well-known graphic designer. He has nothing to do with Turner Duckworth, and he wrote about beauty.
Yeah.
So it was great. That. It was great. It was a hard thing to do. It took 2 years.
I love this book because I'm gonna I got this book and I opened it up, and like one of the first pages I opened up to, and this is no joke, I have it even saved right over here. I opened it up and I saw this, everyone. There
Sparks.
It is. And then like a few pages before there was Steel Reserve, and I was like, holy shit, this is college. Because Sparks came out when I was in college, and it was the energy drink malt beverage that would get you blasted. Off a 4-pack. And of course we loved it. And then as I'm reading through it, it's like, it's Sparks, it's Steel Reserve, and then there's a whole section on Metallica, and I'm a huge Metallica fanboy. And if you go back to season 2 of this podcast, I interviewed Bill Kenny from Focus Lab, and we had a whole discussion about the branding of Metallica on their latest tour. And so, like, for me, this is so culturally relevant and written in a way that just speaks to me. But like, how did you decide, like, how did Sparks make its way in? And Steel Reserve, which I don't even think anyone even knows what the hell these drinks are if they weren't around at that time period. But why?
Right.
What made that relevant?
Well, we wanted, again, to tell stories about the brand creation and interesting story, behind the scenes stories of brand creation, right? And the guy who created Howling Monkey, Sparks, Steel Reserve, and the failed St. Ides with the Tyson Holyfield story.
Oh, right.
Mine at Wessinger, amazing, amazing guy. We're still in touch. And he was just such a maverick in the alcohol space. And it was such a pleasure. We worked with him for over 10 years and created so many brands for him. And we realized these were great stories. These were all brands that were created with like a strong idea behind them, and products that also had a strong idea behind them, and the graphics to kind of support them, and also a great storyteller. I mean, there's so many amazing stories that Minot mentions in that piece.
Yeah.
So that to us was a no-brainer. Like, even though some of that work and the brands don't exist anymore,
Right.
it kind of didn't matter because it's sort of an ode to great design and a wonderful client and brand love, like people like you, Stephen, who still remember those brands fondly, right?
I don't remember the times with those brands, but I remember the brands.
You remember being blacked out by having too many still
Oh,
reserves.
Lord. I certainly do. But I think it's like, I saw the book as like it's like almost like an anthology as well, right? Like it is a collection of the best of, I suppose you could say, even though you've done more incredible work. But like, just like the iconicness of it. And it's funny, like, and I'm not, that the day that the book arrived, there was another book that I had ordered on Amazon that has nothing to do with branding. It's more of like a philosophy book. It's called The Sovereign Artist. And it's all like little aphorisms and like little like meditations, kind of think like Marcus Aurelius meditation, but all about lifestyle design. And those are the two books I brought with me on vacation. We were having this conversation. I was up in Massachusetts. And I'm a big proponent. I'm like, no cell phones in the bedroom, no cell phone in the bathroom. Like, I try to limit my cell phone usage as much as I can. And I just found myself just geeking out and like just being like, this is so cool because it's such a different style of book than any other book. And not to say that you guys couldn't write the book on creating iconic brands. I mean, you could write the definitive guide to creating iconic brands because you have. But again, classic Turner Duckworth style, you took a hard left turn at Albuquerque, did it your own way.
Well, the thing is, there are so many books out about branding, right? And we kind of felt like what's more interesting is that all of these stories are written in the first person. It's someone who's behind the creation of the brand, often some of the clients and also the creatives, talking about what it's like to do that, what the creative process is like. And that's, we didn't, when we were doing sort of an audit of branding books and design books, we realized there weren't a lot out there. There's, aside from like an autobiography or something like that, or something by Stefan Sagmeister, which are like epic books, there just wasn't anything like that. So that's why it feels different also, because you realize it's just someone talking to you and telling you a story.
And I think you're also showing a little bit through a storytelling lens on how the sausage is made, right? You're showing people, and I was a musician growing up, and I still am a musician. And I remember watching on repeat over and over and over again the Metallica documentary on how they created the Black Album in the studio. And it was an hour and a half, 2 hour long documentary, and I loved it. I loved watching them record that album. And there have been other musicians. I love behind the scenes. And maybe as human beings, we are just attracted. Like, I think we just naturally have that curiosity on how things are made.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I think there are so many tidbits and stories in this book that haven't been told before. And the fact that we're giving people a platform to tell kind of the behind the scenes and the things that may seem unimportant when you look at the final work product, but it's all part of shaping these brands and shaping all of the design that happens. So yeah, I'm glad you found it entertaining.
Yeah. No, obviously, as you can see behind me, I have no shortage of books pertaining to our industry, and this was just such a different kind of book. What was it like when it got launched? Like, did the three offices have like a joint party? Was there a book release party? Like, what was that like? I'm sure it was so rewarding for the employees that have been there forever, that have worked on these projects, but also for the new employees where they're like, well, wow, like, this is what I'm a part of now. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, it was for those who worked on it, it was a long process, right? Took 2 years. for those who didn't work on it, it was almost a surprise, like, oh my gosh, we did, we made a book. And that's a great achievement. We also, thanks to Fiden and our PR agency, we got a lot of great press. I think, it's interesting in social media, haters going to hate. You can get a lot of bad comments, but it was refreshingly positive in general. We got a lot of positive comments from people. And we had little book launch events in each of our studios, but nothing major. We did a couple of events with Fiden, and we did one in New York with AIGA, and we're still actually riding that wave and doing another one in San Francisco in the fall.
Cool.
So yeah, it was great with the amount of press that we got around the launch, which was in Q1 earlier this year, was fantastic. Got a lot of coverage, and it's something to be proud of. It's really exciting.
So when did the documentary come out?
The Netflix documentary. Well, yes, they've been following us all around for the last couple of years, so it may still be a ways away.
I mean, that obviously would be incredible. The 3-part series, right? Joanne, you've been in the industry for so long, and it's changed drastically. I mean, I just in the 15 years I've been in it, it's changed, and I can only imagine what the next change, the wave of change is going to be like. So, if you had a magic wand in your hand and you could change anything about the industry today, what would that be?
That is a good question. What would I change? Well, I think the one thing I would just wish for is that clients would go about choosing their agencies in a different way. I think the whole buying process for clients, it's more and more procurement driven, even with smaller clients these days. And that whole process takes some of the personalization, customization, and chemistry out of the equation, because it's all about filling out an RFI within a spreadsheet format and uploading it to Ariba or Coupa, and you don't even get to meet someone, and then you get to a CREDS presentation, and it's literally, I mean, we've had CREDS presentations that are 20 minutes long, and we're supposed to show 3 case studies.
Oh,
like that's kind of challenging,
Yeah.
So I guess that whole the way of going about quote unquote selling I think is a lot harder, because they're trying to make it a bit more automated and data driven. And to be honest, creativity and choosing who you work with, I think it should still be about someone, the people, and it should be about chemistry, and it should be about and a deep understanding of, okay, these are case studies. This is how we got there, rather than literally having 2 slides that you have to do per case study in 3 minutes each. That's kind of hard to communicate over that, So I would say I wish that were different, and I'm not complaining. It is what it is, but it would be great if that weren't the direction that we've clearly been going in over the last 5 to 10 years, especially. I mean, we've been responding to major RFIs and RFPs, that are very complicated for well over 10 years. And that's just been the way of the world, unfortunately.
I think it was last week, when we're recording this in July, the end of July. I think last week or the week before was the small agency conference in Boston.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to attend, but there was a lot of chatter around search consultant, whether it's Mercer Island Group or Pete Carter and Creative Haystack, who I've had the pleasure of working with, and some other search consultants, and how search consultants are now also looking at smaller agencies. Do you work with search consultants, and what's your take on how they help to facilitate the procurement process?
Yeah, we don't as much, because those search consultants are often helping clients with a pitch process where they're having more traditional advertising agencies pitch for the account, right? And so they have to do free spec work, obviously, to win. And we don't do that. However, I would say, Stephen, that is starting to happen, where the search consultants are asking for pitch work, running branding pitches like advertising. And I got to say, it's really hard to do it from a branding perspective because, branding projects, they don't happen, they don't work like advertising. And so first of
Right.
all, advertising is obviously more campaign based, right? Short-term work product that lives for maybe a month, maybe 3 months at most, before it gets old and needs to be, it needs to evolve. What we do, it's much more enduring.
Yeah.
What we create can be used for 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so it takes longer to do. And if we do it in the pitch process, we're giving away the store
Yeah.
because there's no media buy. There's no other work necessarily to get.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, and the answer is we do sometimes work with pitch consultants, but not as much, but it is starting to happen more. And that is where they're also modeling the pitch process after advertising.
And that's what I'm seeing, having worked on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Branding agency side and the ad agency side. I was with Curiosity for a couple of years out of Cincinnati and love them dearly. And they're going after the big ad accounts. And so like we had to do the spec work and we had to put all that out there. But at the same time, there's also been, well, how would you handle our brand? And how would you evolve our brand to match the campaigns? I think that there's a lot of movement towards, consolidating the efforts. But to your point, apples are apples and oranges, and you can't, it's extremely difficult. And I think it's actually unfair to the agency on the branding side to do spec work because there's different insights that we're looking at than an advertising campaign. Because the advertising campaign, to your point, is very finite in time, and we're solving a unique business challenge, sell product, introduce product, whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
Whereas branding, it's like, no, create something that's going to live in the hearts and minds for the next 20 years. Like that's a completely different skill set.
It is. And actually what's interesting is more clients are understanding that that branding is more upstream and has to be done well first, and then rolling out to campaigns, which are then more short-term. And advertising agencies, and by the way, we're owned by Publicis Group. We have been part of Group for 10 years and have a lot of wonderful partners in ad agencies. They're also going upstream and working in the branding space because the clients are asking for it. And so in the best scenario, we're brought on, we stay in our swim lanes and we're brought on to collaborate with an advertising agency when they see an opportunity that maybe the client hasn't identified yet, that because the advertising agency realizes that the visual identity assets, the toolkit that they're working with might not be great. And so they realize that there's work to be done. So I think there's an opportunity here, which is great because hopefully that means we will continue to be relevant. That's the idea.
And my hunch is branding will always be relevant. But does Turner Duckworth have aspirations to working on more campaigns and more advertising, or as you look at the future, like no, we're doubling down on branding?
We're doubling down on branding, and branding needs to show up in all sorts of branding, activations, be it out of home, experience, digital, and so forth. So we have to look at everything and figure out the guidance and make sure that there's fixed, assets and also flexible ones, and create a kind of a flexible, inspiring system that other agencies would be happy and inspired to use. So I'll just say we're not out to become an advertising agency. That's not what we want to do. But more and more we're having to dabble in that space and partner in that space.
And I think that partner word is the ultimate word. I think with the great partnerships, everyone's going to win, including the client, and I think more importantly, including the customers of the client. They're going to win. You said you brought up flexibility, and in the past, right, brand guidelines were seen as just rigid documents.
Right.
How dare you do that? Like, you're going to get hit with the ruler, like with the nuns. But I feel like flexibility is showing up more in branding. We see it with Spotify. We see it with like these large brands that have just like a lot of different touch points. Do you think that the days of the brand guidelines are behind us and we're moving more into like an operating system?
Yeah. So brand guidelines used to be much more rules based, right? It was like do's and don'ts. Remember those?
Yeah.
And it was very driven by grids and templates and things you had to really strictly adhere to. And we have long now been proponents of opening brands to play and creating more flexible systems and a lot of assets so that a brand can flex in different spaces. And especially, obviously with social media and influencers, they kind of demand more from brands. So they want to kind of own the brands themselves on some level. I mean, can't own them, but like they want to engage with the brands. They want to use assets, stickers, all sorts of things. And so now what we're doing is we're creating more things that
Yeah.
fans of brands can work with and can play with, and opening our clients' minds up to that notion that we don't have to be so precious with the logo anymore. We can do different things with it. I mean, MTV was like the first one to do that ages
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
but no one else did that for a while, right? And actually Verizon's a really good example. We recently redesigned the identity for Verizon, and it just launched a month
Yeah.
ago. And that is definitely a new approach to branding, or kind of the current approach to branding that I think will last for a while, which is a brand that's really open to flexibility, built for Gen Z, built for a diverse audience, really, and will be allowed to constantly evolve. And a
Yeah.
client, by the way, who's just incredibly courageous and visionary.
Yeah, I mean that branding came out, and obviously there was the Netflix comparison and all that chatter going
And
around.
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, that's how anyone looks at logos and design.
There's
They
always going to be,
automatically go to, what does it remind me of? Because that's how the brain works, right? It's by free association. It's by association with the familiar. And it was also because in that when it launched, they were using the logo against a black background, which was actually not how it was meant to be shown. And so when it was against a black background, it looked a lot like
yeah,
Netflix, but that's okay too. I mean, that's fine. It's not Netflix.
exactly. It's not Netflix. End of conversation. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
I think what you had said though is so important. Like it's almost like you're giving the brand permission. You're giving them. They have the permission now to breathe and to connect with such a diverse group of cohorts of audience types, and one size doesn't fit all, right? And that's just not
Right.
how things are. It's not how we want to, as consumers. We don't want that, right? We want brands that meet us on our meet us where we are.
Exactly. And that's what brands have to do. They have to think about, they're always thinking about customer first in terms of their product or services and how they're going to sell, right? But now we have to think about also, how is the creative going to meet the consumers where they are and promote fandom? But we've been doing that for 20 years. We did that with the Coca-Cola work
Yeah.
in 2004 to 2006. And that was really, really, like, that had never been done at that time. I mean, that's why that work was so groundbreaking and kind of set a new stage for design. It was very influential within the design world and the creative world. And I just have to name drop our client Moira Cullen, who wrote about it in the book, because she was really, really courageous. She had that aluminum bottle
Yeah.
made that Coke couldn't actually mass produce for years, but she had a prototype made because we designed the graphics for it. And she brought it to every meeting and put it in the middle of the conference table as a symbol of their North Star, where they were trying to go. And it eventually got made and was sold like in nightclubs, and it was like super cool.
Right.
And yeah.
I mean,
So
you talk about courage and courageousness, right? Like that is such an a trait that you look for in brands, in CMOs, in the C-suite. And then when you find that, I've been lucky to be a part of a few brands that have courage and want to do it. I think the worst thing is when they tell you they have courage, but then the cowardly lion comes out and you're just so
yes,
deflated.
absolutely. Because courage is all relative. So one brand's complete rehaul might be another brand's revitalization, or just slight renovation.
Yeah.
So we have to calibrate it based on the brand, its legacy, its longevity, and who's at the helm and what they really want. And sometimes we have to pressure test that when we're engaging and getting briefed.
Yeah.
And exactly, you find, you have a client says, I want to completely reinvent the brand. And then you actually find out they just really don't want to move the needle very much. And that's sometimes disappointing. And, one of the things that's hard for us to do is to part ways with the client, but it has happened because it's just like banging your head against a wall, especially if the brief changes. I'm sure you've been through that many times where, what you set out to do is not what the client actually
doing.
wants to do.
Right. They claim revolution when all they want is evolution, and they barely want that. Well, Joanne, I mean, this has been a tremendous conversation. I can talk to you for hours, and we should schedule a part 2. Maybe next time I'm in San Francisco, That'd do it. But I had an absolute blast with you on the podcast. For everyone listening, tell them how they can get in touch with you, with Turner Duckworth, how they can get the book, give them all your deets.
Yeah, I mean, turnerduckworth.com is our website, and we're on LinkedIn, we're on Insta, of course. I'm on LinkedIn, and yeah, find us everywhere and anywhere, and buy the book. I love it. What is it? It's on Amazon. It's on Viden.
It's amazing. And for more on the Branders Magazine, Talking with Branders podcast, go to brandersmagazine.com. That's what it is. And for more on me, you can check me out at stephenbacanta.com. And until next time, Branders, peace out.